All right. So, virtual reality and cultural education. You'll know who I am. All right. So, a quick outline of the presentation. First, it's working towards the definition of virtual reality, the practical definition of virtual reality, history by a small number of examples, technology and application, classroom implementation, and then the demonstration portion, questions, and y'all get to step into the holiday. All right. So a theoretical definition of virtual reality was posed by Klaus Schweinhorst. Virtual reality comprises the notions of collaboration and interaction between users in an intuitive computer-generated environment that appears real with full integration of artificial intelligence products and information tools. So it's theoretically sound, but does it capture the potential of current technologies in cultural education and how we can apply VR? And it is true that communicative environments, ones where you're actually speaking with people, are more immersive, but it doesn't always matter. For example, if we're talking about cultural education, right? It is ideal to have L2 experiences in cultural education, but not necessary. For example, in the French department up through the 201 level, our culture journals are written in English. So the part that I have difficulty with is collaboration and interaction between users. In fact, some people might disagree that without that interaction, it's not virtual reality. I don't necessarily agree with that, because for the purpose of cultural excursions, learners don't necessarily need to interact. Even without verbal exchange, Google VR, which is what we're going to talk about, Google Earth VR, it uses stereoscopic head display. It gives a sense of altered perspective, added detail, and continuity of experience. An expanded knowledge base, right? You have the entire world at your fingertips, right? It's much easier to travel and see things. And then we have tying in with a sense of perspective is map view versus street view, which we'll get to. All right, so the practical definition is exactly what he said without the first half of it. Intuitive computer-generated environment that appears real with full integration of artificial intelligent products and information tools. So to be fair, he wrote his paper about the uses of VR for second language acquisition. So I suppose if you apply it strictly to that domain, it works quite nicely. But if we want to expand outside of SLA and go into cultural education, which is what I'm focusing on specifically here, the constrained definition of VR doesn't leave space for exploration outside of second language acquisition. Thus, we adopt something closer to what could be considered the popular definition of second language acquisition, which is where we equate the hardware with the concept of VR itself, which is the headset, which we'll get to shortly. So, nice little Farnsworth give. No, not in any sense of the word, but entirely yes, absolutely. Exactly what he said. All right, so a very, very, very brief history of VR and just a few examples. The first example, the earliest that I could find, is the Sensorama. It was this mad genius inventor who spent all of his life's money trying to make this thing. It's an early device from the 1950s that did become functional. It was usable, right? And it's like those 4D cinema experiences where you're on the roller coaster in the mall or whatever. It's basically that. It was in the 1950s. It displayed stereoscopic 3D images, which are, you take two images and split them in such a way that it tricks the brain into making it 3D. And it came around the viewer like that. And it simulated the other senses, including smell, which could be wonderful or disgusting. All right, and that's what it looked like. Everybody wants one of those in their homes, right? Mm-hmm. All right, mad scientist to 90s nerds. So, a short-lived VR craze popped up in the 90s. When I was a young child, I was born in 94, there was just this moment where everyone was so hopeful. And then the dreams of thousands and thousands of nerds died, and just to be resurrected in the late 2010s. Oh, so we have these big things. These were one of the first sort of ways that they popped up, which is this pod that you get in and it shakes and it's really clunky and not worth it. There's something closer to what we have now. I do believe that this is actually a early stereoscopic headset, but the graphics were so poor and the technology was so not user-friendly that it just never picked up. It didn't thrive. So, to boldly go where Plato has gone before, we have the cave. This is a more academic application. So in 1991, this group of researchers at an engineering center popped up and they created the cave. the cave looks like that. And what it is it's not necessarily an immersive display, but it takes this and turns it into something sort of 3D. So you've got projectors on the outside of this room, you turn around, right, that sort of thing. Very reminiscent of a holodeck, and if we go back to Plato's The Cave, this idea that we have these sort of virtual images being projected from the real world, not being able to distinguish between reality or not. Early virtual, yes, projection on the walls. Today, large-scale VR setups utilize the notion of a dedicated room. That's popular, so you have this big space, sort of like what we have here, except for oftentimes it's like a miniature black box theater that people end up using, and then they have a cord attached to the ceiling with infinite amount of space, and they can run around, and it's a nice big sandbox. So they took some from this. I think there are some people who still work with cave implementations. That was in 1991. Okay, so you can't get away without talking about Second Life. I have opinions. I have lots of opinions about Second Life, but we will keep them to the fact that there's an emphasis on the creation of 3D virtual worlds, but not necessarily immersive virtual worlds. So here comes some of the clash in definition here, right? So with Schweinhorst, the first part of his definition, it was about collaboration communication. So Second Life is a game / program / virtual world where people can make things, there's a scripting language, there's a currency, people buy property, people get jobs. It's a little intense, just a little bit. People can dress however they want, but what's happened as an education is they've made these neat spaces where people can come together and meet in a virtual environment. I don't know how helpful this is for pedagogy, specifically about cultural pedagogy or second language acquisition, even though that's not the topic. So there, if you want to sit at home and meet all your colleagues in a fake classroom, that's your thing, go for it, until the cows come home. All right, commercial technologies right now, and sort of what we're getting at is this headset, right, we see here. Commercial technologies include the Oculus Rift, which is what we'll be demoing today. PlayStation VR, which is geared towards gaming, of course. All of them, to be fair, are geared towards gaming, but the others are a little more open from what I understand. And finally, the HTC Vive. All right. Virtual reality headset. It looks like that, or this. The difference between the two of them is that one utilizes a cell phone inside of it. It has lower graphics processing capabilities. I've actually brought my computer here today because you have to have something robust to run what we're doing. It's graphics intensive. It's very graphics intensive. Okay, so there's something called suspension of disbelief. So everybody's major concern with virtual reality is it's not real. There's something that happens called suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is a key process to the immersive experience. And it's the ability of the software to overwhelm the senses in such a way that despite the fact that logically you know that this is not real, it's not real life, but nonetheless you become engulfed, your body has natural reactions to it, and the body actually responds to virtual reality. Take a quick look at this video, it's very short. So this is a man playing a climbing game. So he's climbing, he has the headset on. So he can't see anything happening around him. So he's going along. What happens when he falls? That's how your body reacts when you use virtual reality. Your brain gets tricked. There are roller coaster games that make people scream. There's a game where people fight zombies. My friend fell to the ground when she got attacked by a zombie. Your body has physical reactions to virtual reality that is aided by this, suspension of disbelief. People fall, people throw things. You have those Wiimote experiences. Anybody remember when the Wiimote first came out and they didn't have a wrist strap to it and people were chucking them at TVs and breaking things and breaking people's eye sockets and stuff? It happens, right? Yeah. So suspension of disbelief is very powerful, but it's necessary to have a well-designed program, which is one of the bigger difficulties in second language acquisition, but with cultural experiences, it's not so bad.
What's the deal with that thing?
I think your battery's dying. You want me to get you a new one?
Is that or I think it might just be they clicked all on the
Oh, that's what it is, yeah. There we go. All right, So, specific applications for cultural education. So, actual world readiness standards do cite cultural education as something specific to be addressed, not just something that gets included as you're learning the language. It's a specific aim of the foreign language, second language classroom. So, they mention acquiring information and diverse perspectives. Well, Google Earth VR is the perfect example of diverse perspectives. We'll get to that. So, my argument, and the way that we practice here in the French department even, is cultural education can take place outside of language acquisition. Nevertheless, there is some element of interacting with the second language. Street signs, graffiti, businesses. If you're taking a tour through a museum, the art information is likely to be in the second language, things like that. The second language can be incorporated into these activities as well through the use of post-activity response assignments. So how was this experience? Reflect on it. Critique parts of culture that you see, right? You could compare neighborhoods or just about anything. There's a lot of potential for cross-cultural comparisons because of the ability to jump from one place to another, specifically in Google Earth VR. This is my honorable mention. We won't get time to explore it today. We might, since there's not as many people here. It is less interactive than some of the things we've been talking about, but it's an exceedingly immersive storytelling, sort of documentary-esque experience. It portrays Syrian family traveling by boat across the Mediterranean, and the learner, the user, is actually inserted into the scenario. There's no communication, no dialogue. You're being spoken to, though, and you're actually embodied. So if you look down and you see a body, you're sitting on a boat with migrants. And there's an argument that these difficulties that people experience, these humanitarian situations that we discuss in foreign language classrooms, can be difficult for students to connect to. If you've never left your state, or even you've never left your city, really, it's hard to imagine something like this. It's a very beautiful documentary. Every single person I've showed it to has cried like a baby. It's very powerful. I think there's something very, very interesting to be done here. That's the honorable mention. Google Earth VR, however, is where we're going to arrive at today. So, there are a couple of things that Google Earth VR affords us. First is a bird's eye view. It's like you're literally Superman flying above the Earth around the globe. You can move the sun to wherever you want it. You can spin the globe, zoom in. That's bird's eye view. It's like looking straight down at the Earth. If you've ever used Google Earth VR or Google Earth, it's sort of the default mode. Then we have a flying mode. I didn't put it on here. A flying mode where you can actually fly around buildings. So for the largest cities, the most popular cities, France, Birmingham, they've done it with Albuquerque, so not necessarily the most popular cities, but they have taken and 3D rendered buildings. So you can actually fly up to the Notre Dame Cathedral and look at the architecture in detail, up and down. It's like you're flying. Street view is a little more limited availability because it requires that they send, have y'all ever seen the Google cars, right? Have the cameras on top? Yeah, that's what they utilize. They also have people on backpacks that do them in certain harder to reach locations. And that's when you can really get down and feel like you're walking in the streets of Paris or Albuquerque. The controls do require some adjustment, even if you're a gamer. If you're a gamer, it's a paradigm shift, right? Going from a controller or a keyboard and a mouse to these two handheld things that's supposed to function like hands. They have buttons. It's a little difficult, but it works out. It's not too bad once you spend some time with it. It's quite nice. All right, so the idea of designing an assignment, though, let's see. So even though this is, I would consider a superior sensory experience, we can treat VR experiences like we do film critique or critiquing photographs or anything like that, right? You have a picture of a building, well, you have a 3D map of a building, you can go around it. The same sorts of cultural comparisons and critiques are available to language learners. Assignments can focus on specific physical aspects of cities, including like graffiti, architecture, city planning, neighborhood distribution, businesses, anything like that. Things that, you have a picture, there's more information. And every day when we're walking down the street, driving down the street, we process those masses of information, and it's very useful. So follow-up after that could be an essay in the target language, reflection, conversations in the target language, comparisons and contrasts between foreign cultures or the native culture and the foreign culture. So we're going to go to Paris. We have global view, flying mode, and street view. So actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip and then go back. So future research, I'm working with Leslie. We're interested in virtual reality for second language acquisition, which is admittedly a much harder problem because you have to bring together these different domains. You have design, software engineering, you've got natural language processing. I'm not claiming we're there yet. I'm not claiming all of the stuff is, the scaffolding is there, but wouldn't it be great to have Star Trek's holodeck, send some students in and let them solve a mystery or something, right? A little Sherlock Holmes, anything they want. It's possible. It's quite possible. You know, we've got cell phones that speak to us, you know, chatbot technology. The good thing, and this is something Leslie and I have been discussing, is that even though you need something that can communicate fluidly as an artificial intelligence, it's a limited domain for an A1 level speaker or a B1 level speaker, right? Or you don't need something robust that can discuss the stars in the universe, right? So, all right. So I think do questions and then we'll go to the demonstration. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't know enough to ask a
Yeah.
question.
I have a question. So the material you're going to be seeing,
Yes.
this is just stuff that you found that's readily available as opposed to stuff that you had to manipulate and create
You
to
mean
work for?
on Google Earth VR?
Yeah.
So Google Earth, Google as a company has a habit of hoarding data. They have lots of data on me, on you. If you have a cell phone with Android on it, they know everywhere you go. They send people all over the world to record Street View, and they have satellite data maps. This is readily available. You can download Google Earth for free. It's completely free, and Google Earth VR requires, of course, that, but there is Google Earth without VR, right? You can go around the globe, zoom in. It is completely free. I had to assemble none of this. This was just a click, a download, and the whole world is at home.
That's cool.
Yeah. And these documentaries, there are several documentaries, museum tours, things like that. BBC put out that documentary. So VR, this is not like the 90s. VR, there was this bubble and then it crashed real hard. The technology's there now and people are seizing it. So we don't just have virtual reality, we also have augmented reality, which is something else that's a little different. So rather than completely blocking out what you see around you, it inserts things into what you see around you. So you can walk up to an engineer can walk up to an airplane and it could overlay a diagram of where all the parts are, right?
They do this now.
So VR is getting really, really robust, yes.
I said they do this now.
Yeah, they do it. It's like people who do CAD design, like for designing cars and stuff, they have a big black room, they walk in and they start designing, and they can walk around a car.
Yeah, actually, one of the engineering firms in town is starting to use this technology. The young African leaders who were here last summer, they went there and they demonstrated it for them.
Specifically augmented reality?
Yeah, but it was the thing you mentioned earlier with the cell phone, like the smartphone
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
glasses.
so that's probably more virtual reality.
Yeah,
So
perhaps.
yeah, exactly. No, it's great. I mean, it's
But we could walk around these
Yeah.
apartments and sort of see how convenient is it to have the kitchen here, and
Ooh,
how
yeah.
convenient it is to have the toilet there versus there, and
yeah, it's
so forth.
It's lovely. It's really flourishing. There are millions of dollars being poured into this. Like it's not gonna bust. This is here to stay. I am willing to guarantee that claim. This is here to stay. Yeah. All right, I think.
Well, I got another question. I got a sort of a killjoy
Sure.
legal question,
Yeah.
since that's part
Of
of
course.
my identity. So, if you want to use this in the classroom, like this sounds great.
Yeah.
This sounds great. But if you use it in the classroom, and some people are falling. I mean, I'm not suggesting you use the tree climbing
Sure.
program, but
Sure.
but are some people going to fall
Yeah.
and hurt themselves? Or you mentioned how the one program, the Syrian refugee program, people are crying.
Yeah.
How worried are you, not for yourself,
Yeah,
but
of
for the industry,
Sure.
about physical injuries, emotional injuries,
Yeah.
and so forth?
So as far as the physical context, falling and things like that, like you said, we're not going to go climbing necessarily, right? I think that there are adventure-based groups that go out in universities all the time and do dangerous things. If it ever came to that, I'm sure there's a way to resolve that. I'm not an expert in that domain. With Google Earth VR, I would claim that the likelihood of falling is quite low, right? In terms of emotional injuries, I watched a film about the Holocaust the other night in a film class, right? I think university is the place to deal with difficult experiences. I think a good practice is to let your students know that something could be emotionally difficult, but past that, it's a learning opportunity. I can't speak to the legal aspect as much, but I don't expect anyone to fall tonight. Yeah, I think it's a great consideration. I wouldn't try to put any of my students on the climbing game. I like to go to Minecraft and fly all the way up into the sky and look down and just fall. I love it. I love roller coasters and stuff, and it's fun for me. Any other questions? All right, to the demonstration we go. So I'm just going to show you all real quick so that y'all can kind of get an idea of what it does, and then everybody can hop on and give it a go. Oh yeah, that's right, I just got to put it on, right? So, I'm just going to give you a quick tour of what it can do. So, you can't see this, but when you're holding it, there's actually so right here, it doesn't show up on your screen, but for me, there's a wall. When I hit it, it tells me I've gone too far. So it has a protective barrier to make sure that you don't run into anything.
The guardian.
The other one for me is called a guard, yeah. The other one's here for me. So, keeps us kind of nice and oriented. So let's go to...
Save.
I got it. There was a really good one. Mulsemi Shed. What was that one? I'm going to go to Mulsemi Shed. Oh, that's definitely not it. No, but that's fine. Safe. That one's good. We'll do that one. Alright, so this is the bird's eye view. It's a little disorienting to change perspective. So actually, if I zoom all the way out, I have the whole world, right? But when we zoom back in, go back to that. Right? So this is us zoomed in. When we transfer from this perspective we were just in to this one, and suddenly it's more like flying. So it'll take it just a minute because the internet's bad in Albuquerque, but this will start to load in more detail, and so we'll actually be able to get in on it. It'll take it a few minutes. It's quite data intensive. It happens faster at home. It'll look actually entirely realistic. But what's interesting is, so this is the bird's eye view. You can fly around. Again, it's still loading. But we can go to an actual street view, and I can move around just like I'm there. Oh, there's borders there. Borders everywhere. So I can walk around this beautiful garden, right? Learn a little bit about it maybe. See some interesting people. You can go down this way. Like that. Even more interesting, we can pop over to Paris. I think this is the most stereotypical. No, we went to Notre Dame, not the July Fed. Okay, so here, you can actually pop down on the street, and there's the church. You can walk around it, see what's there. So this sort of makes me think of one of the things that's added to the experience is sort of like Kantian sublime, right? You get up to it and you feel that sense of wonder because it's bigger than you. If anybody would like to try,
Me.
it's open. Go for it.
Yes.
All right, you're gonna have to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. No.